There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Shawn the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel and another episode of Zooming In, a series on my channel where I engage with bookish social luminaries the world over to discuss literary, bookish, writerly articles online. And for his debut appearance on this series, but a veteran of many such appearances on other series I have, this is Alex joining us from Hamilton, Ontario. How are you, Alex?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on here. I did go and
Oh,
do a little research. I watched one of the videos, the one you did with Bernie recently, which was great. So I hope I'm prepared.
we've been really looking forward to getting you involved here and going to be harassing you to come back as often as you can fit it into your busy schedule. We're here to talk about an essay that was on LitHub back at the end of August. And it's actually, I think, an excerpt from a book. But anyway, it's called On the Bad Binary of Good and Bad Literature by Josh Cook. And I think it's an excerpt from his new book, The Art of Libromancy, which has a fairly new release. So, Alice, what did you make of this article? I'm dying to talk to you about this.
Well, I really enjoyed it. I think, all of us who participate in social media in some form or try to influence others about what to read and what's good literature and whatnot, always, at least I'm self-aware of the fact, I don't want to seem as overbearing or snobby or overly snarky. I know it can happen sometimes. You're always self-conscious of that. So I really appreciated an attempt to reframe how we talk to others about books. It's a pretty academic in terms of the language, this particular piece, but in terms of kind of a philosophy of how we're trying to encourage others to maybe read stuff in a less popular, more challenging area of writing, literary fiction of various sorts. I appreciated some of the ways that the author was conceptualizing that.
You are a content creator, especially I believe, on Bookstagram. You don't have a secret blog that I don't know about. You're also
I
a
used to.
podcaster, bookish
Yeah.
podcaster. Um, so could you relate to what he was talking about as a kind of bookish social media content creator yourself? Is that how
Uh,
you kind of mostly read it?
yes, right. Because I've never written academically about books, and a lot of his criticism of what he calls cultural authoritarianism, I think, are directed more towards more professional, snooty reviewers, places like the London Review of Books or the New York Review of Books, or maybe like the first year English professor who expects their students to have this enormous background in the classics. And I get that because I've been in that experience, at least in school. I took first year world literature or English literature, and I've read reviews that have had the kind of tone that this guy is criticizing. So yeah, I did feel what he was saying.
He is writing as a bookseller. He gives examples at the beginning, which kind of set the tone that he has customers, shoppers from at his store that trust his taste in books so much that they buy gift cards and they give them to him and just said, when you see a book you think I'd like, just add it to my tab or whatever. And then he goes into an exploration of what is taste in books or good taste in books. He's focusing it on him as a bookseller who's recommending books to readers. I thought it got a little confusing because to me, if you're recommending books to a customer, it's because, and you're doing that well, if you're good at it, it's not that you have good taste, I don't think. It's that you know what your customers' tastes are.
Yeah. So I guess he wants to challenge his customers a little. It's easy for him to probably, like someone who's into fantasy, to sell, what was that book? The Fourth Wing, right? It'd be easy to sell that book without, much effort. Or someone who's into crime thrillers to sell the new S.A. Crosby or Cosby book, right? I think there's what he's trying to figure out is like, what's a way that I can push people into this comfort zone, maybe read things that are a little more challenging that they're not used to, that they may be a little frightened to enter, and trying to do so in a way that's not off-putting or feels snobbish. I think that seems to be what he's trying to grapple with.
Okay. And did you relate to that? Do you do that on your Bookstagram account?
Maybe not on my Bookstagram account, but maybe with family members or
Okay.
friends.
Oh,
I find like in my day to day, because people know that I have my Bookstagram account or I do my podcast. So, and I'm sure it's the same thing with you. Your family and friends say, Shawn, what are you reading today? What would you recommend? Right. And I think to a certain degree, that's where I think I get, but I have some friends that read very different, or enthusiastic readers, and read very differently than me. And
yeah.
so, how do I get them to, figuring out that link? What's the link to get them closer to what I'm reading to? And I think that's maybe what he's trying to grapple with. How about yourself? Do you?
Well, no, I mean, what I do is if I have any awareness of what I do, it would be that I just talk about what I love and also what I hate.
Yeah,
And then people respond to it as they see fit. I don't pretend to be an arbiter of good taste at
yeah,
all. But I mean, other than that, I think these are good. So I judge people that don't like them or that like what I hate, of course, but I also don't really exalt myself. I just wanted to say this is my subjective response. Do with it what you will. And I
yeah.
always joke that I think I have a sizable minority of, perhaps it's even not a minority of subscribers or viewers that pay close attention to what I hate because that might be what they would be most interested in.
Yeah, because
So
they know all the books Shawn has hated, I've loved, right?
that's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Now, this is a little bit of an aside, but do you ever go up and talk to a bookstore employee or owner to get suggestions or
Sometimes, yeah,
advice?
because we have our bookstore that's close to where I live called the City in the City, and I've developed a friendship with the owners then. The one of the owners is actually the guest in my next podcast episode, and also one of the editorial committee members of the Hamilton Review of Books is an owner of another bookstore in Hamilton, which when I moved to Hamilton and I was looking for bookish people, I'm relatively shy, but I got over that enough to like approach the bookstore owners and have chats with them. And I always ask them like, what are you reading? What have you liked?
Well, that's very interesting. I don't know what is wrong with me, but it has never occurred to me to ever ask somebody who works in a bookstore for advice about what I should read. It just seems strange to me.
Oh,
Why would I
interesting.
ask them?
Yeah.
But maybe I'm missing out.
If you found yourself in Nashville and you went into Anne Patchett's store, would you ask her what she'd recommend? Do you like Anne Patchett? That might be
I was going to
the
say, I'd say, and can you suggest some writers who, unlike you, write good books? I guess just because I know what I like, or that's not how I choose my books. I mean, maybe I get suggestions from watching BookTube or whatever, however else. But yeah, it just
Here's a example for me. Like I know what I like to, right? And usually when friends have tried to gift me books, part of me wants to like
don't
say
do
thank
that.
you, but part of me is just give me a gift card, right? I'll know, I can
Yes,
choose
just give
myself.
me a thing gift
Yeah.
card.
But that said, there's areas like I really like graphic novels, a fascinating area of literature. The one that got longlisted for the Booker, what's it called? Sabrina, a couple of years ago, wonderful, and this follow up is great as well. Hamilton has one of the best known Canadian graphic novelists, Joe Ullman, who I did interview in one of my podcast episodes, and he works at Epic Books. And so, yeah, if I'm looking for like what's his thoughts, what are the new graphic novels that really tweaked his mind because he has very good taste and taste that I think align with me, then yeah, there's those moments and those opportunities I try to take up with bookstore employees. This guy, if he came, like the fellow who wrote this, who was the author he was really plugging there. It's a long Eastern European
Krasno I think
Krasno
it's
Horkai.
pronounced. Horkai?
Krasno Horkai, yeah, and I've never read, but obviously
No.
he's been longlisted for the International Booker a couple of
Yes.
times, and I think his name gets floated. But the one part of this article that I felt slightly annoyed by was he goes into this tangent about this fellow and goes like very enthusiastic about the sentences he writes and things like that. I'm not sure I would jive with a bookstore employee getting into that kind of pitch, but
And I
you know,
thought it made those kinds of digressions in this piece made it unnecessarily long.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. But yet still thought not having read this author myself, I liked the way he talked about his writing. It just seemed a little bit out of place in this essay.
Yes.
I struggled really with the overall essay in terms of the way it was written, the terminology it used as a traumatized recovering grad student. I couldn't stand that. It seemed like Foucauldian terminology. Like to me, it's like fingernails down a chalkboard. What was the phrase? Cultural authoritarianism.
Yes, yeah.
Like what is that?
Very
Has it?
academic, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I
and
get if
and
you
then he distinguishes authoritarian good taste as opposed to humane good taste, and it's like, well, I think that we could probably talk about this issue very simply, but
yeah,
these
don't be a
terms,
dick when you're recommending books is really what he's trying to
yeah,
get
right,
at.
that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. And once you pick away at that and you start seeing that like he's really getting at is and I liked his idea of successful versus not successful because it's like for different people it takes away too many objective criteria about how you judge a book. And I do think there are some objective criteria we can judge books by, but for a lot of people reading, it's the subjective ones that are most important. And what makes it successful for a particular reader are their subjective tastes. And I like that framing of like, was the book successful for me? Why was it successful for me? Why could it be successful for you? Things like that. Those I think good questions.
Well, sure, and I guess that kind of makes me want to go circle back to what I said early in this chat is that I think what you would want to do, what I try to do on my booktube channel, but as a bookstore person, I would want to get to know what people's tastes are rather than anything else. I mean, that's or at least describe what kind of a reader I am and why I liked it, and then they can make their own decisions. But and
Yeah.
I don't think that he is really disagreeing with that, but that's how I would have. That's how I frame it for myself. So
Yeah, and I think he's obviously writing a book with some academic pretensions. I assume he doesn't speak in this lingo to his customers, and might not push this particular author on every like someone who just wants a simple, cozy crime drama. But yeah, I love LitHub. I have to say, when it started off, I think about 5, 6, 7 years ago, I can't recall. I remember listening to a couple of episodes of Book Riot where they were a bit snarky about its launch because they were like, what's it going to do different than the New York Times? But I really think it does something different and it offers analysis and a little more of, edgy politically content than what you would get in the New York Times, for example. And I like all their reviewers. Emily Temple's lists are amazing. So I really do appreciate that it exists.
oh, and it's sure fueling this series on my little channel. Yeah,
No,
yeah. Is there
absolutely.
anything else about this article that you would like to say? Because I think otherwise we've done it up
No,
good.
no, good. It made me feel a little, just that book that I mentioned, Fourth Wing. So I just, this kind of snobbiness, I think it does pop up on Instagram, the sometimes as well. And I know someone, I think it was a very well liked takedown of that book, Fourth Wing, which I know genre wise is not my type of thing. But what I read of the review, it felt a bit nasty.
I don't know
I
anything about the book, so can you, for other people that might not know what you're talking about, tell us a little bit about the book and the controversy or the criticism.
it's a YA book, and I think I'm just reading the Kobo thing. It's a fiction and fantasy book. I'm not going to read
Right.
the outline of it, but
Who's the author?
her name is Rebecca Yarros, and it's
Okay,
probably the
I've heard of her.
best-selling book of the year.
Okay.
I read widely, and I have friends who loved it and adore it. And so I did see some snobbish reactions to it on Instagram. So I don't think we're above it. And I'm sometimes get, we love books enough that sometimes we get snobby about books we think shouldn't get as much attention as they do. But This article, I think, made me think about like what's a more constructive way to engage with that kind of criticism.
It's something that I need to be constantly reminded of. So that's a
Yeah.
good spin to put on this article.
Yeah.
Yes, I have gone on lots of rants about how. What do I say about the Da Vinci Code? It was an all-time low and a lifetime of reading. Anyway, this was an all-time high. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting about this with me, Alex, and I can't wait to get you back.
Thank you so much.
Not revenge, but invite you back.
Yeah.